The news in detail on the hour from the WOR newsroom. President Nixon and Soviet Communist Party leader Brezhnev conferred today 24 hours in advance of the scheduled formal talks. The two leaders simply agreed that the summit conversations were of vital importance. Mr. Nixon's arrival at the airport outside Moscow was described as cool but correct. About 100,000 persons lined the streets to welcome the president, the first United States head of state ever to visit the Soviet capital. The first day of negotiations were uneventful. Apparently all they did was lay the groundwork, though they did talk for about an hour and three-quarters. Later in the day, a banquet was held at the Kremlin, and Mr. Nixon criticized, veiled criticism, the Soviet Union as a military supplier to Vietnam. President Nikolai Podgorny responded by saying that Moscow and Washington must work together to establish better and friendly relations. The meeting between the president and Brezhnev was described by Moscow radio as frank, businesslike. The crowd that greeted the president bears the description of curious but not exuberant. But it was a far bigger turnout than greeted Mr. Nixon on his arrival in Peking. The reception was televised across Moscow. Mr. and Mrs. Nixon were guests at a Kremlin dinner tonight, first-class decor and food, which included caviar, smoked salmon, beef fillet, red and white wines, champagne and brandy. The president put on a big smile during the dinner, but said little. And of course, in addition to other drinks, there was vodka. No word on how much was consumed. According to an unidentified White House source, North Vietnam is feeling the pinch of the mining of its ports and the escalation of the bombing of the North. The official who made the disclosure to newsmen declined to put his name on the record. The source said the North is running short on food, is encountering widespread black marketeering, and prostitution is rampant. The source, whoever he is, made his disclosure to newsmen reading from documents marked top secret. As for the North Vietnamese military offensive, the source said, it is still too early to call it a failure, but it is way behind schedule in achieving its objective. He declined to predict whether the holding by the South Vietnamese means a quick end to the war. Who is the White House source making the remarks? No clue from the copy. The briefing by the White House source came on the heels of articles transmitted from Hanoi by New York Times correspondent Anthony Lewis. He had reported the opposite, that the mining and the bombings had had no visible effects on Hanoi's morale or ability to carry on the war, and that life in general in North Vietnam had not been seriously disrupted. A good report on Alabama's Governor George Wallace. He is feeling some activity in his legs for the first time since he was shot down a week ago. As doctors put it, there is some involuntary muscular activity to the toes of both feet. Though encouraging to them, the doctors are reluctant to say whether the governor will ever be able to walk again. They will not know until surgery is performed to remove the bullet from his spine. Paying a visit today to Governor Wallace, Vice President Spiro Agnew.
The governor is very alert and is talking a lot about politics, of course, and we had a long conversation. I congratulated him on his primary victories.